It's just like Counter-Strike. You get one life, 2 places to plant the bomb. Don't mess up or you're going to lose the round. Yo, Extravagant Icons here, Call of Duty 4 National Champions. Welcome to Dallas, Texas for our National Championships. Modern Warfare 2, their National Championships will be taking place on Sunday with my boys Fwiz and Hastro broadcasting.
Assassin down to a 1-on-3. Assassin just on the other side of that bomb box, coming back around. He's going to be able to peek out there. He's been able to get a spot in a battle. 1 versus 3. Go!
Nate Shot, you just made 100 grand. How does that feel?
I don't want to work at McDonald's anymore.
It's a 1v1. Proofy versus Killer. The bomb is down for Barrico. Shots fired. Killer trying to desperately take out Proofy. Proofy has to go out and defuse it. Killer gonna draw him out. Shoot him. So close to a championship.
Whoa! Karma, you are nervous!
There you see the rings. Karma second, a first for Krim, a first for TP, and of course, their Captain Aches.
3 versus 3, time is ticking. Oh, Setsa! He's just gonna kill a bubble game by a second! Setsa! Unbelievable play! Valley's Nature, 1-on-3. He's gonna get the kill though. 29 seconds left. Bomb down. Can he stay alive? Nature, no! Bates win the championship!
Gets traded out as well. Karma doesn't get the second player coming and challenge over top. Portal's gonna be able to help him out. Karma going for the kill. Portal up to you. 1v1 situation. Assault coming over. And a full win the 1v1 out the gaming. We will see a Fudging dynasty has been cemented. They are the greatest roster in Call of Duty history.
Once again, a world champ. That's 2 rings for Aches. One versus 1. Scump, Celium. Scump goes in, tagged up, backed up. It's Celium with the cover, and Scump's gonna have to back away for now.
The Maddox advantage.
Scump goes through, and Scump stabs, wins the 1-on-1 in Optic with the reverse sweep. Ship for face!
Alright, listen, everybody. I appreciate the support here. Normally I take the route of humility, at least I try to. But they just went back to back and won a world championship.
I don't believe it! He talks shit! He gets hit! Texas, get up on your feet for the home team of Texas! To back, world champions of Texas!
Imagine that when a game was released, you were given a textbook from the developers about the game. You had access to hundreds of pages worth of vital information that taught you everything you could possibly want to know. The most basic concepts to hidden techniques that no one ever talks about. All of that right there in front of you, organized neatly and explained thoroughly. Well, that's never going to happen. So instead, over the past few years, I've spent thousands of hours writing down every single bit of knowledge that exists about competitive CoD. Hundreds of pages worth of information have been gathered over 2 decades of this game's competitive history. Starting in this video, we will begin analyzing every aspect of that compiled knowledge. These hundreds of hours spent writing down everything that I know about competitive CoD make me look like someone who's clinically insane writing their manifesto. I'm not gonna lie, it did feel like that at some points. My name is Tommy's Locker, and I'm proud to present the CoDstitution. Buckle up because we're going to round 11. Article 1, the CoDmmunity.
And Hastro is now the only one as Fierce is taken down, and now the bomb is down, so Hastro not in a good position. He's going up against Big Timer, Sharp, and Rambo, or rather Dodgers, Rambo and Sharp, and Hastro somehow able to get away from that one.
Well, let's see what the coach can do.
This clip from CoD 4 is one of my favorite competitive CoD moments. This is from the 2009 MLG National Championship in Anaheim. It was one of the first real major events for CoD. It was the only LAN tournament held by MLG for CoD that year. The series wouldn't even be picked up for the pro circuit for another 2 years. The Halo Grand Finals had just ended, so Chris Puckett came over to commentate the CoD Finals. This was also Fwizz's first time casting a tournament. The matchup was Envious versus Extravagant Icons. Both teams were full of founding CoD fathers. What makes this so special to me though is one person in particular, Hastro. You see, without Hastro, you wouldn't be watching this. I, like many other young players, grew up revering professional players like him. Players like Moho, players like Sharp, players like Assassin, players like Nadeshot and Aches, and players like Parasite. As much as I revered them, they weren't heroes. They were legends.
Remember, kid, there's heroes and there's legends. Heroes get remembered, but legends never die.
Hastro is the Babe Ruth of competitive CoD. At least this was the mindset that I had when I had met him. I mentioned that CoDstitution wouldn't exist if it weren't for him, but I hadn't explained why yet. Back in 2023, I was going to college at the University of North Texas. I had started and built up the collegiate CoD team from nothing. We had just enough players to make a team, which meant I didn't have to play and could coach instead. One of the players called me one afternoon in early October about a meeting with Optic. Apparently his grandmother had 14% ownership in Optic Mexico. I didn't know that was a thing, but I wasn't complaining. He was setting up a meeting for the team to meet with Hastro at the Optic headquarters in downtown Dallas. From my understanding, Envy had been bought out by Optic or was operating out of the headquarters or something like that. The topic at hand was about getting involved in collegiate CoD. The attendance consisted of the team, the mutual connecting player's grandmother and father, and Hastro. This opportunity felt like it just appeared out of thin air because it kind of did. For me, this was the most important opportunity that I had ever been given in my entire life. I was hoping to walk away with a job in the field. I would do anything to be a part of working within the competitive CoD scene. I was naive at best. The entire meeting was really for us to get to tour the studio and talk about the collegiate scene. This didn't stop me from preparing for the weeks leading up to the meeting. Hours and hours of preparing for a presentation that I believed could change my life. I can't overstate enough how much I royally screwed this up. During the meeting, I talked and I talked and I talked some more. I rambled and I kept rambling so much that I could visibly see I was boring and annoying others. All this made me want to do was to ramble more. I knew I was screwing it up as I was screwing it up, but I couldn't stop. I had to keep making it worse. The cherry on top was that my presentation was overloaded with so much information that it couldn't even be read. A few things specifically stuck out for me on this visit. The first is how nice everyone was, even though I was clearly making a fool of myself. The father could see that I was digging myself a hole, and he was trying his best to get me out of it. The second is that the entire scene got put into perspective. I stopped looking up to all of these people in the scene. These are just normal people that have a really cool job, that's it. They shouldn't be idolized, but rather they should just be respected. The last thing that impacted me is what Hastro said to me towards the end of the meeting. He told me a story about when he had a conversation with Ninja. At the time, he was just a Halo pro who wasn't really known outside of that community. Hastro told him that if he keeps streaming, making content, and works consistently to perfect his craft, that he's bound to be successful. It's almost unavoidable not to be within this space. So that's why I did this. Thank you, Hastro. Truly, if it weren't for your words of advice, I wouldn't have written the CoDstitution. What is the CoDstitution? The CoDstitution is a document that I began writing in 2023. After humiliating myself during a meeting that I had with Hastro, I got to work. I didn't really know what I was working on yet, but that didn't matter. I was coaching the collegiate team at the University of North Texas at the time. In my spare time, I would coach random players that I found online. I would offer my services for free, even reaching out to players frequently. I cared more about perfecting my craft rather than making money off of it. During each of these sessions, I took notes in order to make some of these ideas in my head tangible. I needed them written out so they could be visualized. I started small with only a few pages at first. Then, quite quickly, 4 pages turned into 40 pages. I had taken so many notes that I found it difficult to search through a specific topic that I wrote about. The next most sensible option was to begin organizing and cleaning up my work. This organization opened up so many pathways for topics that I hadn't previously thought of. I then expanded on these topics and kept expanding more on and so on. It was like I had a bag full of assorted Legos. Once I separated them by size, shape, and color, I was able to think about all the possibilities of what could be built. I did this for about a year before I even knew what I was doing. I was creating the most comprehensive source of learning material for competitive CoD. The first draft was just under 200 pages. It was rough, it felt bare, and it wasn't enough. I didn't understand how this could be the case though. With almost 200 pages, this vast wealth of information should feel complete. While there was a lot of work to be done, it still just wasn't enough. Each concept or theory had at least one paragraph. There just isn't nearly enough depth on the subject when what you're talking about requires pages of discussion. Setting it just under 200 pages is where it stayed at for a couple of years before I accepted what needed to be done. I always knew that I needed to expand on each of these topics, but the scale of the work seemed so overwhelming. With getting married and having 2 children, it was placed on the back burner. So naturally I avoided this mountain of a task. What needs to be done is this right here. This is what needs to be done. What I'm referring to is depth. I'm creating a greater level of depth within the CoDstitution. Depth allows my work to be fully understood. Depth allows my work to be demonstrated. Most importantly, depth allows my work to be challenged. Depth is the result of providing a meticulous level of attention to detail. I spent hundreds of hours articulating my knowledge into a digestible format. My goal is to show the different levels of depth that are ever present. Most players are only seeing the surface level of what this game has to offer, and that's by design. CoD isn't a difficult game to be good at. In fact, it's probably the easiest esport to be good at. So why would I spend all of this time trying to explain every single aspect of the game if the skill requirement is so low? It's simple. I want to show that even in a game like CoD, you can still find massive amounts of depth. In the almost 2 decades that I've spent playing the series, I've been able to rack up an extensive knowledge that I would feel quite terrible about if I didn't share it. The catch-22 of this is that while many other high-level players share this knowledge, no one has done a good job explaining it. Before getting into the fundamentals or more advanced concepts and theories, we need to look at the CoDstitution as a whole. While teaching players how to be good at the game is a large portion of the CoDstitution, it's not all of it. Learning about the history of the scene, the community, and its culture, amongst other aspects, are all very important. To fully understand a game, you must understand its culture. I'm not going to cover the history for which team won which majors. That's all information you can find online. I'm going to cover the history of the small idiosyncrasies that make up this game. With over 20 years of games, there's quite a bit of knowledge that goes along with it. The great thing about having decades worth of games knowledge is that it's still relevant today. While learning this, my intention is to inspire other players to seek a deeper understanding from CoD. Hopefully this builds an interest to explore future games with the same sense of curiosity. The majority of information presented can be translated and applied across other games. In fact, a majority of this information has come from other games. I want to mention this briefly in regards to contributing to the CoDstitution. We are a community and our shared knowledge is greater than anyone's alone. If you feel that a subject needs to be covered, corrected, or updated, you can mention that in my Discord. There's a channel specifically on there for the CoDstitution. Call of Duty eras. Competitive CoD has experienced many different eras throughout its time, each being a defining period that has its own unique history. It's a series that resembles a roller coaster with its ups and downs in terms of game quality. It has consisted of generational defining eras as well as dark and easily forgettable eras. The era in which you started playing is usually considered the most nostalgic to you personally. The views of how CoD should be and made often closely align with the games from that era. I want to mention one thing about the time frame that I'll be using. Since CoD comes out towards the end of the calendar year, I'll be referring to the entire life cycle of its game. So if a game was released in 2009, then I'm referring to the couple of months in 2009 and the remainder of the time in 2010, before the next game was released. I want to put a disclaimer that I will do my best to be objective when discussing the eras. As best as I will do this will be the most subjective portion of the CoDstitution. The idea of recounting and capturing the community's opinions from a specific time are subjective by nature. There will be bad games and really bad games. To not mention that would be an injustice to the good games. Here's an overview of each era and what it was like. The Genesis era. This is where it all began. The Genesis years were from 2003 to 2006 and consisted of the first 3 games, CoD 1, 2, and 3. At this time, playing online with other people was a relatively new concept. There weren't many, if any, forms of competition you could get outside of challenging another clan to a match. Competing in general was mostly unheard of. There were sites like NX Gamers and Game Battles that were in their infancy stages. They weren't well known and hadn't built up enough of a reputation yet. The idea of going to LAN to compete was non-existent. It was new and young, like an egg that was just about to hatch. While CoD 1 was the game that took the first steps for the series, CoD 2 was the game that gave it direction. It was simple and satisfying, but overall it had a unique smoothness to it. This fluidity is what CoD has based its games on since. It's also what other games have died trying to replicate. It's considered to be the best game from this era. It laid the skeletal work for what a modern arcade shooter should play like. The third game didn't fare as well. It was the first example of a failed innovation from the developers, and it wouldn't be the last. People had actually went back to CoD 2 because of how bad the game was. This period was the birth of the series. Its history is widely unknown and underappreciated. The OG era. These games are what defined CoD. The OG era was from 2007 to 2009 and consisted of CoD 4 Modern Warfare, World at War, and Modern Warfare 2. These games created the culture for the series. They outlined what CoD is and what it was to become. They set the standard for what all future games in the series should be. They elevated the series to the top contender in the arcade shooter genre. That was no small accomplishment during that time either. This time period was the absolute best for console gaming and arguably gaming in general. Great titles were coming out just in the year of 2007 alone. CoD was competing with previously established iconic games like Halo and Gears of War. It was the moment when you graduate from the kids table to the adult table at Thanksgiving. CoD 4 gave the series a modern feeling, not just aesthetically, but through gameplay. It introduced custom classes, weapon attachments, and perks. This allowed you to play the game how you wanted to. The competitive scene finally had the opportunity to blossom. Players were able to compete in online matches and tournaments through game battles. This website allows players to compete to earn points that boosted their reputation on the site. You could also earn money, but reputation was valued almost just as high. It quickly became the dominant form of competition within CoD. Major League Gaming, the company that owned and operated game battles, created a national championship for this game. This was the first major tournament for the series. Players were finally able to play on main stage for the first time. The impact of this game helped launch CoD competitive scene into existence. This game in general changed FPS as a whole. World at War was essentially just a reskin of CoD 4. Nothing changed too drastically between these games other than the aesthetics. This wasn't necessarily a bad thing for the game. The structure was almost identical, but the atmosphere did a complete 180. The feeling went from modern day warfare to a gritty and brutal World War II experience. The ambience was dark, raw, and sinister. This was and still is the most immersive game in the entire series. Unfortunately, many players didn't take to it the same as the past title. Whether it was the same time period, the maps, or the sharp change in feeling to the weapons, it wasn't felt amongst the player base. The competitive community recognized early on that this game wouldn't be played competitively. World at War would be skipped over entirely and CoD 4 would be played competitively for 2 years consecutively. This is the first and only time this has ever happened. World at War was a really great game, but it was overshadowed by CoD 4. The community felt that the game was a step backwards, but in reality, it was a step to the side. MW2 felt like a clear upgrade from CoD 4. This was a true sequel to the game that everyone loved. The game was faster, and there was more depth to the meta. It felt like there was twice as many options for how you could play the game. YouTube gained some traction with CoD 4 and World at War, but nothing like what was being seen with MW2. Game battles ramped up in popularity. If it wasn't already a stage to build your reputation as a player, then it was now. Even with how much progress the series was making, the competitive community was relatively unheard of. It was a small community that was unknown to the majority of the casual player base. This isn't to say that it wasn't growing or thriving. I understand why a lot of newer players think that people view these games through rose-tinted glasses. What they don't understand is that these games had soul. The more recent era of games lacks soul to the point that you never even knew it existed. When you played these games, you felt the passion that was put into developing them. When you competed, you had an intimate relationship with how you played the game. Your playstyle was distinct because it could be. Being a part of the community back then felt like you were a part of something. Something meaningful, something important. The Golden Age Era. There has never been a truer statement spoken than "you just had to be there." The Golden Age Era was from 2010 to 2012 and consisted of Black Ops 1, Modern Warfare 3, and Black Ops 2. Thinking of this time brings back a feeling greater than nostalgia. I had to research what that feeling actually was, and it's called desiderium. It's defined as an ardent desire or intense longing, specifically mixed with the feeling of loss or grief for something that is gone. This time period was truly the best in CoD's history for both casual and competitive. During this era, YouTube was at its all-time peak, which unified the community. Competitive CoD was finally getting a spotlight amongst other top competitive games. The pathway for the future of this series' competitive scene was being paved. It was now possible to be a full-time professional player. Most importantly, the game and the community were in a healthy state. There were gripes, of course, but no major issues were bleeding the player base. Black Ops 1 was such a unique game. It did feel similar to World at War in that it was a reskin of the previous game. Nothing too major was innovated, with the weapons and perk systems being similar in structure. A lot had changed with how the game was played. It seemed slower, but you had more control of the situation. The game felt overall more balanced. The maps were phenomenal, and for competition, they would be a staple within the series. The game was picked up for the 2011 MLG Pro Circuit, giving it its first recognition as a top esport. The series was finally getting some well-deserved respect by being played alongside StarCraft, League of Legends, and Halo. We were the new kid on the block, and we had a lot to prove. The competitive meta was very simple. Everyone used the exact same weapon and perk setup. There was very little deviation from the standard class setup. It reminded me a lot of Halo, with everyone using the BR. This meant that every player was on an even playing field. The maps were a perfect size and had a great flow. The game still flourished with online competition through game battles. For the first time, large-scale open bracket LAN events were held where anyone could sign up to compete. It felt like we were making our mark with competitive gaming. This was until the following year with MW3. This game was just MW 2.5. It fixed a lot of things wrong with MW2, making a better game on paper. MW3 was a better game to play casually because everything was balanced. For competitive, it felt worse because of the general game design. This game also launched without LAN support, meaning that in-person tournaments were near impossible. All of the progress made from the prior years was thrown straight into the garbage. The game had gone back to being played strictly online with a few exceptions. There were a few local tournaments sporadically here in the US, but the biggest tournaments were across the pond. Players would fly all the way over to the UK to play EGL tournaments. This was such an odd time to be a part of. Even with the peak era of this series, there were still hills and valleys. As frustrated as the community was, it was a year that strengthened the scene. People were very upset and had every right to be. A narrative had been developing since World at War with the idea of 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards. While this didn't affect the casual community, it really felt like one huge step backwards for the competitive community. Black Ops 2 hit like a freight train in every way imaginable. To start off, the game was built with the idea of being played competitively. The entire class system allowed you to play exactly how you wanted to. The idea of Pick 10 created the most diverse meta in the entire series. Roles became more clearly defined, no longer were there just Slayers and OBJs with the occasional support player mixed in. Each of these 4 players had a distinct role of either Anchor, Slayer, Support, or OBJ. While I slightly prefer the Black Ops 1 maps, there's a reason why they keep bringing back the Black Ops 2 maps year after year. How many times has Raid, Slums, or Standoff been brought back throughout the series? The game was fluid, fast, and balanced. You couldn't ask for a better game than Black Ops 2 for casual or competitive. The bounce back from having no LAN support last year to being a core game for MLG events was monumental. For the first time, CoD overtook Halo in popularity. There were so many major and local LANs spread throughout the season. The CoD World Championship debuted this year, closing the chapter on the National Championship previously. The stars aligned for the perfect game, and that's what we got. The best and worst part about this era is that it happened so early on. When you peak so early in the series, you spend a lot of time looking back at the good old days. It's quite unfortunate to say that it's only gone downhill from here. The decline. This is a specific turning point in the series and not so much of an era. It started with the launch of Ghost in 2013. Any game that had to follow up Black Ops 2 was sure to have a rough time being successful. Anything less was going to be picked apart and lose the interest of the masses. That's exactly what happened too. The game just didn't feel right. It felt unfamiliar, clunky, and visually it just looked odd. The changes to the perk system and game modes were unnecessary at best. One positive thing about this game is that Ghost S&D was one of the best in the series. It did have its own identity and it was a standalone title. It hadn't felt like anything else before. As CoD does every year, it was an attempt to innovate, to change for the sake of changing. The problem with this line of thinking is that when you finally got the recipe right, the last thing you do is change it. You spent years figuring out and perfecting the formula for a good game. Replicate those good ideas. Don't replace them. Unfortunately, this is the start of the decline. It's gone downhill every year since, with only a few titles being good at best. The Jetpack Era. This era would be considered CoD's emo phase. The Jetpack Era was from 2014 to 2016 and consisted of Advanced Warfare, Black Ops 3, and Infinite Warfare. It was short-lasting, no one asked for it or wanted it. Oddly enough, it's somehow looked back at with nostalgia. This time period lasted 3 years like most other eras. It feels so short-lasting because these games stand out by being the only to have jetpacks. The idea of jetpacks goes back to changing things for the sake of changing. I understand that innovation is required in some areas, often in ways that are unexpected and foreign. The backlash voiced from the community almost instantly was for boots on the ground to return. What these games did show is that advanced movement could be enjoyed, but how it was to be implemented was the question. The skills learned from these games would impact how all future games would be perceived. Advanced Warfare was chaotic. It was fast and vertical, which isn't something players had seen before. It was like having 8 cats in an apartment climbing all over your furniture, jumping from one to the next. It turned a lot of people away from the series. Skill-based matchmaking wasn't first implemented in this game, but it was the first time that it was very noticeable. This would be the start of the largest issue that would turn people away. People do look back at this game fondly for competition though. There were more tournaments this year than any other year. Even if a game isn't great, having frequent competition is still a good thing. As much as I personally dislike jetpacks, there was a new skill that players needed to develop. Black Ops 3 took the idea of jetpacks and perfected it. Even players who didn't like the idea of jetpacks being in CoD were able to appreciate how it played. The game itself wasn't as good as Black Ops 2, but it was better than anything that had come out in the past 2 years. It really felt like they fixed a lot of the issues with jetpacks. They made them more fluid and easier for the general player base to use. There was a new ban and protect system that came with split opinions. You could ban or protect certain weapons, attachments, equipment, or perks before the game. This did artificially increase the meta diversity, but there are better ways to do that. It really just forced people to be adaptable rather than creating a meta. You would end up playing S&D without dead silence, or all ARs would be banned. Even though the game was good, it's not what people wanted. While this game would be appreciated, boots on the ground was still desired by the majority of the player base. This would be heard loud and clear when the Infinite Warfare trailer dropped, making it at the time the most disliked video in the history of YouTube. People didn't want jetpacks. They wanted boots on the ground. The problem was the studio had already been developing Infinite Warfare when Advanced Warfare was still in production. It's not that this was a bad game, but no one really played it. People were fed up with jetpacks. Even competitively, it's not brought up much because it was so easily forgettable. It doesn't help that it dropped alongside Modern Warfare Remastered. The reason that these two games were released together was that the hope that Modern Warfare Remastered would bring players back. It really says something when you release a game that you spent 3 years developing that gets overshadowed by a remaster of a game from a decade ago. Infinite Warfare was easily the most forgettable game. The Jetpack Era was interesting to say the least. I hope that we can all look back on it like that emo phase in our lives, mostly cringy with a twinge of nostalgia. The Silver Age Era. This era was an attempt to return to our roots while still staying modern. The Silver Age Era was from 2016 to 2018 and consisted of Modern Warfare Remastered, World War II, and Black Ops 4. For the first time since Ghost, boots on the ground was back. It felt like a return to a version of CoD that we were all familiar with while still being fresh at the same time. It was like coming out of a fever dream and trying to figure out what just happened over the past few years. If it's not already apparent, the Silver Age is the second wave of good games that didn't quite match up to the Golden Age. The Jetpack Era and the Silver Age are the only two eras that share a year, being 2016. This is the only time that two games were released that same year. One of those games was Modern Warfare Remastered. This game was released 9 years after the original. The community collectively banded together and chose to play this game instead of Infinite Warfare. It was just as much of an act based on nostalgia as it was defiance. This brought a second life into the most beloved game in the series has ever known. For those who played it back then, it was a trip down memory lane. It wasn't exactly how you remembered it, but that was okay. It played how you imagined the game playing when you were young. The competitive scene was split between Modern Warfare Remastered and Infinite Warfare. You played the former because it was a good game. You played the latter because that's where the CWL tournaments were. It was such an interesting time because of how the player base was split. This game was released as a backup plan since they knew Infinite Warfare wasn't going to do well. World War II was another standalone title like Ghost. Similar to Ghost, it felt out of place. Everything felt just a little bit off. The community's perception of this game was rough at first. Halfway through the game's life cycle, they released an update that overhauled the game. This left the game with a positive reputation, with many being able to easily forgive the shaky start. This game had the best feature in any CoD that had ever been released: Game Battles integration. How it worked was you would link your Game Battles account to the game. Then a match was accepted and you could join the lobby from inside the game. It was such a simple idea, but it was monumental for the competitive scene. This was way ahead of its time, and we only had it in this game. Speaking of competitive, it felt forced. Anytime CoD has tried to reinvent the create a class system after Pick 10, it's forced players down narrow playstyles. This implementation of divisions locked you out of specific playstyles, preventing diversity within the meta. It felt a lot like Ghost competitive in the sense that it was a standalone title making a change for the sake of change. Black Ops 4 was a game that was grasping for something that was just out of reach. At this time, Black Ops games were quite solid and reliable, though they were still chasing the high from Black Ops 2. Competitively, it was the offspring of speed and chaos. Starting off, for some reason the game was played in a 5v5 format instead of 4v4. Other games are played in 5v5, but there is not nearly as much communication in those games as there is in CoD. This likely was not taken into account when making the decision. Anyone who understands competitive CoD knows that communication can be overwhelming with just 4 players on a team. This also meant that an additional 25% more gunfights would be happening. An increase of 1 to 2% is quite considerable, but to have 25% is pure chaos. What sped up the game is the usage of stim shots by all 10 players. When your health got low, you could step back and instantly heal. The entire flow of the game was disrupted. Any timings to apply pressure that had been developed over the past 11 years were useless. This game had the potential to be better than it was. The ability for greatness was just out of reach. The Downfall Era. Where do I even begin? The Downfall Era was from 2019 to 2021 and consisted of Modern Warfare 2019, Cold War, and Vanguard. This era started with having one of the best-selling CODs of all time. That combined with all of the shenanigans in 2020, COD had nowhere to go but up. Since Ghost, COD has been declining in quality every year. This was no different. It went from slipping to free fall with no parachute. We went from having insanely fast-paced game to a slow, tactical shooter. A game where playing aggressively was rewarded, but now it's being punished. This era is what started to bleed the player base. It was a parasite to the community that drained our patience, trust, and ability to think critically. It was very clear the direction that this series was heading. It was even more clear how little they cared about what we thought. This was the introduction to modern COD. Modern Warfare 2019 was the studio's first attempt with a tactical shooter. Many casual players enjoyed this iteration of COD. The competitive community didn't. There was nothing wrong with tactical shooters, and they have their own place in gaming for both casual and competitive. What's wrong is when you have an entire community that plays arcade shooters, expects arcade shooters, and then gets given a tactical shooter. This game was fine for a tactical shooter, but horrible for COD. This game birthed and amplified so many issues that absolutely destroyed the soul of the game. I'm going to list just some of the issues. Increased skill-based matchmaking or engagement-optimized matchmaking. Squad spawns, 5v5, no red dots on the minimap, no dead silence as a perk, doors, fast time to kill, too many attachments on guns, dynamic aim assist, tactical sprint. These are just to name a few. This game is most remembered by its flaws rather than anything else. Cold War was just a Black Ops tactical shooter. While it did have more of a resemblance to an arcade shooter than the previous game, it's not what players wanted. The idea of one step forward, 2 steps back was ever present. One positive thing is that competitive have reverted back to 4v4, which eliminated any unnecessary chaos. The overall view of this game for casual and competitive is that it was just alright at best. It wasn't necessarily a bad game, and it certainly wasn't a good game either. So many of the perks and utility felt useless. The entire class system still forces you to play a specific way rather than giving you the agency to play how you want. Skill-based matchmaking was still a problem, and it would continue to be. When you have issues within the game such as poor creative class design or useless perks, it creates a problem. Skill-based matchmaking amplifies all of the problems within the game. Perks and utility go from feeling useless to being pointless. This game had potential, but because of poor design choices, it can never be good. Vanguard was very quickly considered to be the worst game in the entire series. The game had no soul. It was void of any identity or soul. The game was fundamentally broken. It took developers months to fix very basic issues. If it wasn't clear before, it was now with the game that multiplayer was taking the backseat to Warzone. The entire reason COD became popular was being pushed aside so that they could ride the oversaturated wave of battle royales. This was a very monumental point in the series. For the first time, there weren't many mixed reviews. It was almost unanimously seen as a horrible game. That's quite an accomplishment that they turned into a goal when developing the next game. The Dark Age Era. This is the point in the series where the player base went from bleeding to hemorrhaging. The Dark Age Era was from 2022 to 2025 and consisted of Modern Warfare Roman numeral 2, Modern Warfare Roman numeral 3, Black Ops 6, and Black Ops 7. Players wanted something different from what they had been playing the past 3 years. They were sick of skill-based matchmaking, tactical shooters, restricted playstyles, an over-complicated attachment system, and horrible maps, just to name a few. So the obvious answer by the developers is to double down on all the things that the core player base dislikes. Once the problem that you've created is great enough, you can sell the solution in the following game. How they did this was not in a way that players were expecting, though. Modern Warfare Roman numeral 3 was essentially a DLC for its predecessor. Black Ops 7 was literally the second half of Black Ops 6. These games were the solution to the problem that they created. Modern Warfare Roman numeral 2 immediately overtook Vanguard as the worst game in the series. Many players often tout this game as the worst game they've ever played. It was yet another slow, tactical shooter in a series that traditionally consisted of arcade shooters. You were actually punished for simply moving around the map. The new addition of a time-released perk system could not have been a better announcement that the developers had no clue what they were doing. You could be 70% or more through a game before earning all of your perks. Attachments made your gun worse because each attachment had so many negative effects towards your gun. Every bad decision from Modern Warfare 2019 had returned. This game was truly a masterpiece of poor game design. It was completely unintuitive to how a person naturally wants to play the game. I don't think I have ever seen developers try so hard to make people not want to play their game. Modern Warfare Roman numeral 3 was a step in the right direction, except for the fact that its entire existence was just a DLC. One big patch of a game meant to fix the problems that were created. This game too had a lot of potential. Modern Warfare Roman numeral 3, not Modern Warfare 3, had remastered all of the Modern Warfare 2 maps, not the Modern Warfare Roman numeral 2 maps. Did you get confused about that? Because everyone else did. They remastered these maps, but not the rest of the game. This is actually a really bad thing. It's great that the maps were remastered because they were truly fantastic maps, but the bad part is that they didn't remaster the whole game or even the weapons. The idea of what this game could have been is greater than what this game actually was. Black Ops 6 is when the fatigue of poor game design started to heavily affect the player base. It seemed like so many things that were disliked by the player base were continuously ignored by the developers. Skill-based matchmaking was as rampant as ever. Doors were still present. The game visually lacked any sort of identity. A new mechanic called Omni Movement was introduced, which allowed you to sprint in every direction. As if timings weren't already screwed up enough from tactical sprint making player movement unpredictable, it would be expected that this new mechanic would increase the skill ceiling. Instead, it created a divide amongst casual and competitive players. For casuals, it lowered the skill ceiling, and for competitive players, it raised the skill floor. People were fed up with these poor game design choices. The fatigue had set in. Black Ops 7 tried to address the problems that they previously created in Black Ops 6. The issue is that the trust was lost and players didn't care. It didn't matter if skill-based matchmaking was going to be removed. Players couldn't trust a company who had wronged them time after time. Even if presented with positive change, players weren't certain that it wouldn't be altered or reverted later on. It's too good to be true was a common belief surrounding anything positive in CoD. As for Modern Warfare Roman numeral 4, that game will have to be added after the competitive life cycle of the game. I believe we are breaking to a new era with this next game. I'm not entirely sure what it will be. I think Black Ops 7 could even be a part of that era, It entirely depends on what Modern Warfare Roman numeral 4 is like for competitive. If you've noticed through my time recounting the history of CoD, the way I talk about the game shifts. It starts off with me talking about the game itself and how the scene was developing. It slowly transitions to all of the reasons why this or that game has failed. I did honestly try not to be so negative about these games. I went back and reviewed every single sentence to see if it was accurate. The truth is, I think there's some importance to speaking about the state of CoD, even if it's negative. We all want good games to play. To not be honest about how you feel about the game only gives the impression that no feedback is good feedback. For the remainder of my videos about the CoDstitution, I will make sure that this is one of my only videos where I am subjective about CoD. If a topic such as doors comes up and I believe they are bad, I will do my best to tell you objectively why they are bad for the game. This is one of the few videos that will not be about the fundamentals, concepts, theories, or any other highly technical aspect about the game. If you have any thoughts, leave them down below. I'd shake your hand and make eye contact if I could. Thank you all for watching.